What's up, y'all? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to episode 7 of Life at Peace. You guys, since this podcast started in January, we've reached over 200 downloads, so that is awesome. Mind blown. We're just getting started, but I wanted to share that with you guys. Thank y'all for being so excited about it and tuning in on a regular basis. Today, we're going to talk about a little thing called uncertainty. So, uncertainty about the future, about certain decisions to make, about maybe friends or where life is taking you, all different types of things. Uncertainty is everywhere. It shows up in every area, and it can happen at any time. But that's why we're going to talk about it. It's something that's been on my mind lately, so I wanted to share with you guys, and surely some of y'all out there are feeling the same way. Once upon a time, I believed that adults, or grown-ups as I used to say, knew exactly what they were doing. It seemed like they always had answers and knew what decisions to make, and they were just not fazed by anything. And naturally, I think this belief stemmed from my own relationship with my parents, because it seemed like no matter what question I brought to them or what concern, they always had an answer for it, and I could rely on them for everything, it seemed. As far as I was concerned, nothing was too hard for them. But now that I'm one of the grown-ups that younger me used to be so impressed by, I can confirm I was wrong. Very wrong. It wasn't that adults always had the answers, but really the opposite. They always had questions, but they had to act based on what they could control in front of them at any given moment. Adults were just trying to navigate life through its uncertainties, through the unexpected, the unpredictable, the things that stumped them, the things that challenged them. No matter what came up, they had to keep going and do the best they could. I'm realizing we spend a lot of our lives being uncertain. Whether it's about what we're going to eat, where we're going to live, what kind of job we'll get, we are constantly in the state of making plans and anticipating and trying to predict or get some glimpse of the future. We stress over whether we've made the correct decisions and trying to see the big picture of our lives or the small details in some cases. And really, uncertainty is uncomfortable. That's why we don't like it. That's why we fight it so much. But it doesn't have to be. If you're a planner or a type A personality, admittedly, then you may have a harder time dealing with uncertainty than the more easygoing, flexible type Bs out there. I consider myself to be a mix of both. I'm really anal about certain things, but there's other things I don't really care about too much, and I'm a little more relaxed on them. Like, for example, I hate being late to stuff. I hate running late or falling behind, and so I'm extremely anal about that. So when it comes to anything related to time or having to arrive somewhere, have things set up at a certain time, yeah, I really tend to get all, uptight about that because I don't like being late. But whatever the case, I'm constantly learning that I can't be in control of everything, and so this episode is definitely ministering to me just as much as y'all, hopefully, because this is definitely a lesson that I am actively learning. What may be helpful to remember as we're trying to learn this lesson of not wanting to be in control all the time is that God orders our steps. Now, I grew up hearing this all the time, the Lord orders your steps, the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. No, I just accepted it over time and didn't really think much of it. But as I got older, I started to wonder, well, what does that really mean, though? Is he controlling where we go, or do we have the free will to make our choices, or are we just doing things that we were already programmed, for lack of a better word, to do? And so Psalm 37:23 reads, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way." And just hearing this, that's a little hard to catch, but reading it, so when it says he delights in his way, he refers to the Lord, and then his refers to the good man. So the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and the Lord delights in the good man's way, is what that's saying. The word ordered in this scripture comes from a Hebrew verb that means to guide, direct, or make reliable. And this is amazing to me. The fact, first of all, that God would even delight in us, he delights in guiding us and showing us the way, that's just awesome. It's like, don't you have better things to do? But he takes pleasure in getting to guide us when we feel lost and when need some direction or need guidance. So God isn't controlling our actions. He's given us the agency and free will as evidenced by our ability to accept or reject him. But if we commit our actions to God and ask for his guidance, he's there to lead us in the direction we should go. And committing our actions to God means that we offer everything that we do to him. We're doing it for his glory, not for what we can get out of it or what we feel is best for us, but we're offering our actions, whatever we do, whatever we're thinking, our plans to God, so he can take them and use them for his glory and for our good. To relate this a little bit more to the concept of uncertainty, I have a little anecdote. So one Sunday at church during my undergrad years, the youth pastor spoke on the concept of decision making and the fact that God isn't just watching us to see if we choose right versus wrong. Sometimes we're faced with decisions and we just have to choose something. It's not always a matter of morality. So for example, maybe you're looking for a house or an apartment and you're torn between multiple good options. Should you get a 3-bedroom, a 4-bedroom? Should it be in this neighborhood? This one? This one's 20 minutes from work, but the other one is 10 minutes from work. Like which one would work out best? And it's not right or wrong. It's just, what do you want? Another example could be when you're looking for a car. What is your preference for what vehicle you could drive? A job, how much of your money to put away in savings each month, the college you want to attend. There are endless examples, and there's plenty of times when we don't have to necessarily choose the right thing or avoid choosing the wrong thing, but we just have to make a decision. And this message really stuck with me because I'd always held a dichotomous view of making choices. Everything was either a right or a wrong choice in my mind, and that's just not true. God's given us a measure of wisdom to evaluate our situation and to make appropriate decisions. So the takeaway is that no matter what decision we make, as long as we're asking God to lead us and we feel his peace about it, then we will get to where we're supposed to go. So the key is just to try not to overthink that. And ask God before you make the decision. That's an important part. You don't want to go through and make a whole bunch of decisions and then after the fact ask God to bless it. That's backwards. We're supposed to be trusting God to guide us, and he can't do that from behind. So if we leave him out of the decision-making process and then just ask him to bless it after we've done it, that's really not the precedent that you want to set for the decisions you make in your life. Now, there are certain things that we can be certain about. The types of friends we want, what we're looking for in a job, our overall likes, dislikes, and our personal preferences. Decisions that we make based on those areas are usually pretty easy because we still have some degree of control over those things. However, we have to learn how to embrace the friction between wanting to make decisions but not knowing what to do, how to do it, or which direction to go. This is the friction that comes with being uncertain. And this is why uncertainty is so tough. It's a reminder that we'll never have all the answers or be totally confident in our actions. It's also a reminder to depend on God and to relinquish control to him with everything. We don't even know what the next hour of our lives holds, let alone the next 6 months, the next year, or the next 5 years. My pastor likes to remind us, if our mistakes or our choices were enough to mess up God's plan for our lives, we'd be more powerful than God. What I've come to appreciate, though, is that sometimes God grants us confirmation that we've made the right choice. So, early this year, in February, there was an ice storm, a one-day thing in typical Texas fashion, and it started while I was at work in the afternoon. This semester, I have Thursday night classes that let out at 9 p.m., So on Thursdays, I'm up there. I work at the university that I attend classes at, so I'm up there all day on Thursdays. And given the weather that day, I was nervous about driving home from class at that time. So I had to make a decision between going to class anyway or going home. Class only meets once a week, so I hated the idea of missing, especially since I'd emailed my professor and he had no intentions of canceling class. So ultimately, I chose to tell my professor I wouldn't attend and would just catch up on what I missed. Come to find out, later that night, while I was safely at home in my warm house, I read on the news that there was a 10-car pileup on the same freeway that I would have taken to get home. I was so thankful that I heeded the wisdom to not go to class that night. While this scenario wasn't a case of right versus wrong per se, my options were wise versus unwise. At night, my drive home from campus is about 35 minutes. Traffic is really light, pretty much non-existent, and it's a straight shot. So I'm not that far away from campus, but I'm also not close either. Many of the roads were iced over, especially on the freeway overpasses, and as I mentioned, I would have been on the freeway. So that's what led to the accident on my route. Now, maybe if I had gone to class anyway, I would have been fine. I don't know for sure that I would have been part of that accident. But on the other hand, I'm not sure that I wouldn't have been either. Sometimes in situations of uncertainty, we look for signs or hints of what we should do, or we're looking to someone else to make the decision for us so that we don't have to wrestle with that tension. But unfortunately, things don't always work out that way. That confirmation that we're on the right track, so to speak, doesn't always come right after we make a decision. And this leads me to my next point about trusting God. Uncertainty is really a golden opportunity to trust God. And the frustrating thing about not knowing is that we can't act on what we don't know. We can't control the outcome or even the process to get to the outcome. So we're just at a total loss for what we should do and what our next move should be. The irony is that we're so quick to say we trust God, but when it's actually time to trust Him, we forget what that entails. There's no need to trust someone if you already have the answers. And there's no trust if there's no uncertainty and if there's no apprehension, if we're not a little bit scared or cautious or nervous about moving forward. We are created beings, so we will never have the full picture or the full scope of what's happening. At any given moment, we're only capable of processing what's happening right in front of our faces. And so honestly, it's laughable that we think we can control the entire course of our lives. I referenced 2 scriptures in this episode. So the first one I shared with you guys was from Psalm 37. The second one is from Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. So, Proverbs, the part that always resonates with me in this scripture is lean not on your own understanding. This is huge, and it goes back to what I was just saying about us as created beings. Our own understanding will have us getting frustrated at God with all the questions that come as we navigate life. Our own understanding will lead us to act on impulse or try to help God out. And with this example, I mean, I'm talking about rushing His timing or providing our own answer to a prayer that we've been praying. So you can think of the story of Abraham and Hagar in Genesis for this one. If you're not familiar with it, I'll just paraphrase it briefly. But the Lord promised Abraham and his wife Sarah a son. They were both very old at the time, and so old that when the angel of God came to tell this to them, Sarah started laughing because she was just in disbelief that that could even happen. But then God went on to say, is anything too hard for the Lord? And so later as the story progresses, they're waiting for the child, but some years pass and nothing's happening. And so Sarah has the bright idea to have Abraham sleep with their maid or their servant Hagar, to kind of speed up the process and help God out a little bit. So and then you can read the rest of the story. It's in Genesis, but ultimately Hagar does give birth to a son Ishmael, but that's not the promised child that God was talking about. And so Ishmael ends up his descendants end up becoming it says that he becomes a wild donkey of a man, and so his descendants all end up living in hostility towards each other. So when we try to rush, the moral of the story is when we try to rush things or speed up the process, the outcome is usually not anything that we wanted it to be. And even though it's easy to read or hear that story and immediately want to judge Abraham and Sarah for what they did, are we really that much different? When we've been stuck in a place of uncertainty for so long, we get impatient? Don't we start thinking that we have a better idea, better way to work things out? So the story of Abraham and Hagar in Genesis, that really is just an illustration of what our natural human tendency is when we're getting impatient and when we're just tired of the uncertainty and we want answers now. So I mentioned this in the beginning of the episode briefly, but uncertainty is something that I'm currently dealing with, in particular when it comes to my plans after grad school. So, as I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I'm in an MBA program right now, my Master of Business Administration. And lately, my coworkers have been asking, what are your plans after you graduate? To which my answer is some variation of, I don't know. I try to make it more sophisticated than that, like, oh, I'm examining my options, or I'm considering the possibilities. And it's true. In a lot of ways, I feel as clueless as I did after my bachelor's degree. Except now, I have a job and I'm midway through my 20s, so society doesn't think it's cute anymore to not know what I'm doing. Thankfully, though, I'm not looking to society for approval. The key to not letting uncertainty get you bent out of shape is just to get comfortable admitting when you don't know. Learn to laugh at yourself and not take everything so seriously. You're not a failure if you don't have a 5 or a 10-year plan, or if you have to change your mind about something, or your dreams fall apart somehow and you end up going in a totally different direction than what you studied for. We're not supposed to know or even understand everything or how it works. So just let go of that desire to control every outcome. Trying to guess what God's going to do or how He's going to do it is exhausting, and probably not something that we want to add to our daily list of responsibilities. The point of this episode isn't to tell you to stop thinking about the future. That's dumb. We're always going to think about the future. We're curious and we want to know what's going to happen next. And it's okay to plan. It's okay to take precautions and be prepared for things. But after you've spent some time thinking about the future, come back to the present. Tune back into what's happening right in front of your face and give it your best attention, your best effort. Life happens in seasons, and I believe with each new season, there's new joy, there's new excitement, there's new opportunities, but at the same time, there's new challenges, there's new difficulties, and there's new things to consider that we didn't have to deal with before we got to that new season. So all that to say, there's no rush to get to the future. It's going to happen eventually, and there's no need to be anxious or to lose sleep over it. You know, Jesus in Matthew 6:34, I believe, he's talking about, what can any one of you add an hour to your life by worrying? And he talks about not being anxious for tomorrow because tomorrow has its own troubles. So just enjoy the moment, enjoy where you are in this current season of life, uncertainties and all. There's really no cure, there's no solution for this. There's always going to be that element of surprise in life. And all we have to do is just walk through it and just trust that the Lord is leading us and He knows what He's doing way better than we ever could. And that wraps it up for this episode. So remember to share this with your circle. Thank y'all for tuning in to the end. You can follow me on my podcast social media on Instagram and Facebook, and then the YouTube channel has all the videos. And if you're just watching right now, then you can go on to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google to get the audio only for the days when you just want to listen instead of just watching. But again, I'm so appreciative of y'all's support, and I will be back with you in a couple weeks for a new episode. I'm always open to episode suggestions and topics, so just keep them coming. In the meantime, enjoy the next couple weeks, and peace.